Morning, everyone. Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. Come at you 5 days a week. We're off Wednesdays and Thursdays during the regular season. Big show today. We got Brandon Kravitz coming on at the bottom of the hour to talk some waiver wire ads. Everybody's going to be doing waivers in the next day or so. Also, if you want check out RotoWire, give you a free subscription for a couple days, go to rotowire.com/Jim. Came up with a pretty cool stat this morning. There were 4 wide receivers taken in the first round of the NFL draft: Quentin Johnston, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. The order evades me of which order they were drafted. They were all drafted right together. Anyway, through 2 weeks, they have 31 catches, 336 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and 42 targets. Puka Nacua is not far behind all of them together. So when we look at this, we see that Nacua has 25 catches to 31 for the other 4 rookie receivers, 266 yards. The 4 rookie receivers have 70 more yards. Now Addison scored the 2 touchdowns. Nacua has 35 targets, which is 7 less than Johnson, Smith-Njigba, Flowers, and Addison. Incredible. Morning, Wendy. Glad to see you're here. Chad's here. Welcome, everybody. See what else we have here. Now, oh, man, we got to go over to the Monday night games. Nick Chubb, I'm so sad. Nick Chubb was one of my favorite players ever. If this was the day and age of the running back era where they were getting 30 carries a game and putting up legendary stats, the Emmitt Smith days, the LaDainian Tomlinson days, Nick Chubb would have long been a player on a Hall of Fame track. His statistics are never going to be where they could be because of the split shares that he had with Kareem Hunt for those years. Very problematic. But Nick Chubb, the poor man, I hope he heals quickly. I hope he heals well. But in a short career for NFL players, just a really tough out for him. The expectation right now is end of the season. And it just, like I said, it saddens me more than anything. I don't want any player to get hurt. Nick Chubb, we really miss out. You know, when Barry Sanders retired when he was, I think he was 30. And back then, there wasn't a lot of research out. People weren't talking about the thoughts of, players fizzling out at 30. We all thought Barry Sanders he's got another 5 years left. We had no idea. Running backs start to trail off. Barry Sanders is probably going to have that trail off pretty soon. Very few players have been outliers on that part, even the Hall of Fame ones. But regardless, hopefully Nick Chubb's back next year and he can get another good year or 2 in. We can watch him play. Anyway, just tough beat. Browns backfield, what's going to happen here? I wonder if they trade for Cam Akers. Jerome Ford, he obviously was fine last night. He had the long run. That was a great thing to see. But I think going in, they probably want to have another person in that backfield. And I don't know that Pierre Strong's that guy. And I don't know if they bring Kareem Hunt back, though it's possible. He was a declining player last year, and obviously they thought Ford was a better player. But so it would seem in that case, if Hunt came back, it could be to a similar role. So that is a possibility, I'd imagine. Like I said, Akers, I don't think Leonard Fournette's a fit for their system. I just don't think that he is the stick the foot in the ground and go guy. The aggressive. That's a wrong terminology. He's not the guy that's going to get downhill quickly. I think that's going to be problematic. I don't want to say certain. I'm fairly sure that the Browns add another running back very quickly. Very quickly. I don't think they're going to waste much time. I would think by Thursday at the latest, there's another running back on that roster. Chad's asking about Pierre Strong. I don't think Deshaun Watson's a screen to a running back guy. He'll throw them. But if you saw yesterday, he's always looking to buy time and throw downfield. And now that we have, Wendy asked about Fournette. I just don't think his running style, he's more of a kind of, he's not decisive. Leonard Fournette dances and goes. I don't think with Stefanski's running game system, I don't think that fits the blocking scheme they practiced out. I think it's got to be somebody that hits it downhill. And I don't think Fournette has that running style. So the name will come up and I get it. I just don't think he's a fit. I think they're, like I said, I wonder if they're going to trade for Cam Akers. I wonder if that's going to happen. And then Brooks, I did mention earlier, I could totally see Hunt back. The the Browns showed no interest in him at all. They saw the decline last year, and I wonder how strong that was. Chad, yeah, James Robinson's already washed out on 3 teams. There has to be a problem there. Brian, Jonathan Taylor. Oh my gosh. Wow. That's interesting, because honestly, I said that I didn't predict the Browns to like win the Super Bowl, but I said that with that defense, and they played better than I had hoped, and with the running game and the line, and then the passing game kind of supporting that makes it really interesting. So if they have the means, I don't know if they have the means to go in on Jonathan Taylor. They may not. But if they believe in what they're seeing from their defense, that would be a very, very interesting trade. Then Taylor would have a couple weeks to get up to speed. That's a great thing. Ingram would come back. Ingram, which I don't know why I'm thinking what Ingram. Just tell me what Ingram we're talking about. I don't think you mean Mark Ingram. So if I'm missing something here, just put that down, because I really don't know. I don't know why I'm not functioning, but is there a different Ingram? I don't know. DeAndre Swift, well, Brian Robinson won't be available. Mark Ingram's cooked. Mark Ingram can't run anymore. But that's a good point, but he can't run anymore. He's way past the age apex, and he was declining for a few years in. So get that. DeAndre Swift, I doubt he's on the market. And Philly ain't trading him. Philly probably is going to use him, trying to make a Super Bowl run down the road. Brian Robinson right now, he seems to be a fit for what they want. So, again, James Robinson's washed, I think. Unfortunately, I think the Achilles took a toll on him. Let's get back to that game a little bit, though. So, yeah, Jerome Ford did a nice job, and that worked out well for the one game. He had the big run, but we'll see how that steps up. Elijah Moore is disappointing. His attention to detail wasn't good. Just not being crisp enough, not paying attention to the details. And it led to him getting a lot of targets and not a lot of production. Now, Deshaun Watson may have been part of that as well, but Amari Cooper did step up. Apparently the injury, and the media bit us on that one. Totally made it sound like he wasn't going to play. He plays fine, plays a normal snap share, has a fantastic game, doesn't score, so it's not a huge game. But, as a quarterback, Watson, the one thing that was good and bad about him is both. It's both edges of the sword. He tries to make plays, and it's too much. He takes too much time, and he's got to have real specific things work his way. He causes the bad plays by moving around too much. We'll see what happens with that one. I still, in the aftermath of Nick Chubb, we'll see what happens. But right now, not looking good for the Browns at all. That offense is going to have a sustaining running game, because I think if they just go heavy pass, as of right now, not looking great. David Njoku fumbles the ball, but otherwise it was a pretty typical game. He'll probably get a little more usage. I do think they're going to have to try to pass more. It may be a bad idea. It might not work, but I think right now they're going to have to pass more than they wanted to. And Steelers side of the ball, what's going on with Tomlin and Najee Harris? Najee, when he gets the ball, is fine. Now Warren comes in on like passing situations, and he gets bigger runs out of them. And so, people get wowed by that, and they're like, oh my gosh, look at him breaking another big run. Najee's in sometimes when the defense is in a base. But Najee's still doing fine in that situation. Some unblocked plays, and he had some short runs or negative runs because of the lack of blocking. But he is just not getting into a rhythm. They're not getting him opportunities at all. And this was a game. I don't get why the Steelers against this defense come out pass heavy. During the game, I remember I was posting something. This is off the top of my head. I want to say at one point there were 30 passes and like 15 runs. And that was like late in the third quarter, if not in the fourth already. It was midway through the fourth. 30 passes, 15 rush attempts. This was a game that their defense scored them 2 touchdowns. Kenny Pickett, other than he caught George Pickens wide open in the middle field for a slant 71-yard touchdown. Warren had a couple screen passes that worked out. Kenny Pickett couldn't get anything going. Yet, Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator, 2-to-1 pass to run ratio. Do not get it. Do not understand it at all. Morning, Albert. So this just doesn't make sense. If they don't fix this, obviously Mike Tomlin always finds a way to figure things out. Matt Canada has been a real problem. And Kenny Pickett should be a game manager. He shouldn't be the guy with the team on his shoulders, especially doesn't have Deontay Johnson. So I am very concerned about the Steelers offense right now. Now, fortunately, those who played Pickens, the big play came through and it worked out well. And Pickens should be fine. Nervous about the rest of it. Saints and Panthers. Saints get the win 20-17. Derek Carr on the road. He got it done. Didn't look good. They didn't need much. That helped. 21-36, 228, throws a pick. Now, Chris Olave makes a circus catch on a long play. That was very beautiful. A lot of short stuff to Michael Thomas. He did get Shaheed at another downfield one, which was great. But he missed a lot of passes. Derek Carr missed a lot of passes. The line is not good. The interior line, we said in the preseason, problem. And we gave Trevor Penning, the 10th pick in last year's draft, a pass because of injury. He wasn't good. So very big problem there. Now, the Saints, we talked about this in the preview yesterday. Saints at home with Derek Carr at home. Derek Carr at home playing in the Dome is probably going to have his better games there. He's going to struggle on the road. He's Derek Carr. It's kind of what we've seen. And yesterday, despite the win, it was not an impressive performance. Then Jamal Williams hurts his hamstring, comes out of that game early. Now, Tony Jones, you know, he's a depth guy, but he gets 2 touchdowns. Obviously, nobody started him. So there's that. I mean, I guess somebody in a 16-team league with 3 flexes might have started him, but probably not. But he gets less than 3 yards per carry. Carolina's a good defense, and they're at home, so there's that as well. But Alvin Kamara will be back in week 4. So if you're now Jamal Williams with the hamstring, he may not play this week because he got ruled out of that game. And short week turnaround, we'll see how that goes. So it's possible. We don't know if Kendre Miller is ever going to be healthy. All off season, mostly not healthy. A couple times he was healthy, and then not quite sure what his deal is. Not sure if he makes his debut this week. But if, you know, with one more week, if you're desperate for somebody to plug in that's going to get some work, it could be Tony Jones. But keep your ear to the ground as to whether Kendre Miller is ready to make his professional debut, because there could be something to that. Carolina side of the ball, Bryce Young, learning curve for sure. He gets a garbage time TD. So those are in 2 quarterback leagues and had to start him. You got that. Ran for 34 yards. But other than that, he was under a lot of pressure. That was real problematic. So, you know, unfortunate there. Now, he did make some running plays, like we said. When the play broke down, he was able to take off. But he got run down by a defensive lineman on a play. So it's not like he's an overly fast guy. So, look, the Panthers didn't do many favors. He doesn't have a lot of receiver help. Chark drew a pass interference call to get them. I think that set him up for their touchdown. I believe it did. I don't remember if that was exactly right, but it was late in the game. So there was that. Chark had 1 catch early. Adam Thielen got pounded a bunch of early targets, but like I've been saying, the production was great. If you had to start him, beautiful. He can't run. And at some point, they're going to stop forcing him targets because it worked out yesterday. But it's just, who else does Bryce Young have? Mingo's playing a lot, but they didn't. He got 1 downfield pass late in the game, and that worked out. But the Saints were already playing in the shell. They had a 2-score lead, and they weren't like bringing it anymore. They kind of backed off at that point. Miles Sanders, he had I think he had a double-digit yards, like 13-yard run early in the game. Other than that, 13 for about 30, 3 catches, only 4 yards. So the offensive line hurts him. It's tough. Go from Philadelphia to Carolina, but he's getting usage. Chuba Hubbard had 5 catches for 34. A few of those came in the final drive or so when they were trying to score late. So there was that. But other than that, he was a smaller part of the game plan. Besides Thielen with 54 yards, no other receiver hit 30 yards. So right now, Carolina offense, obviously, if you've got Miles Sanders for volume, you're going to play him. If you're a deep enough league and you need Thielen, he'll probably get targets for a while. But right now, it's going to be very tough to trust. Hayden Hurst didn't really do anything if you're a good opener. And I think he got his first catch in the second half, I believe, if I remember correctly. So, it's kind of like right now, it's going to be a work in progress in Carolina. And that's fine. You draft a young quarterback, and that's kind of the route I think we're looking here. Let's see. All right. So If you're enjoying the show, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. I would appreciate it greatly. Bottom of the hour, we'll have some waiver talk with Brandon Kravitz. Let's talk a few quarterback risers. And right now, we'll go through some risers and fallers. I'll give quick hits on these maybe. CJ Stroud's a riser. And what he's shown me in the first couple weeks is that he has the ability to buy time. He throws to his outside receivers. Now, some of those throws are between the hash marks, but nonetheless, he did well in comeback mode against, a bad Indy defense. Fine, whatever. They don't have corners. He still did it. 384-2. He gets all three of his receivers involved. Obviously, Nico Collins is really emerging and becoming a big deal. And Robert Woods, very reliable for him. And then Tank Dell steps up with a solid game. So right now, CJ Stroud, and again, Indy was a soft matchup. I get it. But the fact that CJ Stroud threw for 242 against the Ravens in week 1, that was a wheels up sign as well. So, there'll be some games that they're outmatched, and they're playing without 4 starting offensive linemen. Larry Tunsil also missed this game. So, big hats off to CJ Stroud, really passing some early season tests. Jared Goff, now remember, at home, he was brilliant last year. On the road, he wasn't very good. Well, week 1 on the road, 253 and a touchdown. Fine enough game. Comes home, and I recommended him as a start. I was putting him over some good quarterbacks. Yep, against the Seahawks, 323 and 3 touchdowns. Now he threw the pick, is what it is. But Eddie, thank you, appreciate you. Aiden's in the house, thanks. Chris, thanks everyone for here. Christian's here. Excellent to see everybody here. So yeah, Jared Goff, it works out. At home, just trust him at home for the most part. Obviously, it's not going to happen every time. Kirk Cousins, 44 attempts in each game, at least 300. He's averaging 354 yards. He's thrown 6 touchdowns in 2 games. Wow. What else do you say? That we knew the defense would be bad. We knew they'd have to throw a lot. Jordan Addison is looking good. KJ Osborne, maybe he steps up. They're using him. They're using him almost every snap. And of course, you have Justin Jefferson and Hawk. They're getting it done. So look, for right now, Kirk Cousins will have the occasional clunker, but for the most part, this is going to be who their offense is. And they're not getting a sustaining running game out of Alexander Madison. So they're going to have to lean that. Start sit questions. I see. I'm still turning back on week 2. I'm still crunching numbers from week 2, doing these player trends. So I don't have any matchup data for week 3 yet, because it's like I said, the process of a fantasy analyst is we're grinding waivers today. Wednesday is when we turn the page. So I won't be able to do that one. Any of those start sit questions way too early in the week. If you gave me opponents in your question, I might have a little bit of framework for you, but I couldn't even tell you right now who was playing who. I'm not even at that point. Brooks wants to know, would I trade Swift for Brian Robinson Jr.? Robinson looked great in that game. I don't know what Swift's role is going to be. I think they want to preserve him for the NFL playoffs. I think they knew he was explosive when they acquired him. So I think when they use him, because they had to use him, it looks like they don't trust Penny. And it looks like Gainwell could be back sooner than later. So, but if they say, you know what, Swift gives us a dynamic, the passing game's not clicking right now. So if they go in and they say that Swift's their guy, Swift will be a superstar in that offense. But I don't know what they're going to do. So it makes it tough. Robinson looked great. Denver's not good. And Arizona in week 1 wasn't good. But Robinson looks really good. But they're going to have some tougher matchups. They're going to have some Philly matchups, which I know Philly's compromised a bit. They're going to play Dallas a couple times. The Giants may actually, they've been horrible so far, but if the Giants, their heads are on straight, their defensive line could give them trouble. The linebackers stink. So a tough one here. Randy. Yeah, Randy, I was just saying earlier, I don't know if Kendre Miller is going to be healthy, and you got to watch that all week. He's been on and off. If he is healthy, he'll play. Tony Jones is really like a practice squad type guy, but he's going to get some volume if he plays. We have one more week till Kamara comes back. So it's just going to be a 1 week thing. Whatever we're going to use, be 1 week. If Kendre Miller's going to play, and I don't know what kind of workload, I don't even know how healthy he is. So we got to think about that. I'll get back to some risers and fallers here. Again, Brandon Kravitz coming at the bottom of the hour to talk waivers. Matthew Stafford, how do we ignore it? A pair of 300-yard games. All right, week 1, fine, Seattle. But he does it against the 49ers. So Matthew Stafford right now, look, he only has 1 touchdown over 2 games, so there's that. But realistically, it's looking very good for Matthew Stafford right now. And as long as they get the ball out quickly, which they are, keeping him protected well enough, as long as he's healthy right now, Matthew Stafford is creeping in on that quarterback 12-ish range. The touchdowns could come in Cooper Kupp if Cooper Kupp comes back in week 5. And what they figured out with Atwell and Nakua, wow, this could be Sean McVay's masterpiece, because this may have been some of the least talent he's had, and he is making it really work well. James Cook is a massive riser. Look, I said we liked him even in the week 1 game against the Jets. He went 12 for 46. Not great, but it was the Jets. 4 catches, 6 targets in week 1, comes back. And I was saying, favorable matchup against the Raiders, roll with them. Yep, 17 for $123, 4 catches for 36. Not putting the big receiving yardage up, but 9 yards a catch is fine. James, here's the thing. The only thing with James Cook, it looks like he's not going to see goal line work. That was Damian Harris. That was Samaje Perine. Somebody astutely pointed out to me, well, yeah, with those 2 guys running at the goal line, maybe Josh Allen's not getting the goal line work as much. Yeah, it looks like they said that for years. They wanted him to take less hits. Well, that's one way to do it. They got Harris and Perine. As long as they're cashing at the goal line, we might see a little diminished numbers of Josh Allen as a red zone runner. Did I say Perine? Sorry, Latavius Murray. I always mix up Murray and Perine. It's like the same guy, but like 7 years older. Thank you, Chad, for pointing out. Yeah, Lat Murray is out snapping Damian Harris for what that's worth. A lot of people drafted Harris to be like the backup. They both are getting work. They're both getting similar touches. But yeah, Lat Murray's ahead in the snaps. Thanks for pointing it out, Chad. Appreciate that. Zack Moss, we talked about last week. We start Zack Moss last week. We were saying get him in there. And definitely Zack Moss picked up where he left off at the end of last season, where he had those 4 starts for the Colts, ran for 4.8 yards per carry, goes 18 for 88, doesn't come off the field, 98% of the snaps. That was crazy. And then 4 catches. So he had 4 targets. He had 18 carries. I don't know what Jonathan Taylor's deal is. Don't know if he's coming back. Maybe he is in week 5. But right now, Zack Moss now has 5 straight games with the Colts that he's played very well. And like I said, he kicked Deion Jackson to the curb last year, and that clearly was the case here. Jackson saw some time on special teams. All right, Charlene's in the house. And Randy's talking about Latavius Murray's touchdown celebration. And Chad says, yeah, Cook did quietly get his big game for sure. And against the Raiders, a lot's quiet. Kyren Williams, not much to say here. He's the guy right now. 10 targets. I don't know that 10 targets is reasonable, but hey, the way they're throwing the ball, Puka getting 35 targets in 2 games, and Tutu Atwell getting 17 targets in 2 games, and Kyren Williams at a 10. They're going to throw a lot, I guess. I guess they're not going to be running a ton, but Kyren Williams, he has 4 touchdowns in 2 games. Clearly not sustainable, but he's the guy. And the way McVay is drawing things up right now, yeah, Kyren Williams, running back 2. I have to say running back 2 for sure. And obviously the touchdowns, again, no, that'd be 34 touchdowns in a season. Well, clearly we're not getting that. But still, Kyren Williams, I think he had 100 yards on the nose, combined yards. So, yeah, running back 2 right now. DeAndre Swift, we said this earlier. The concern is he gets a 28 for $175. He had 2 touches in the opener. And I said this, and I'll say it again. I don't know. I assumed Philly wanted to make sure he was ready for the NFL playoffs. They know his injury history. They know how explosive he is, but he could be a big element to win the NFL playoffs. And when Kenny Gainwell is back on the field, I just wonder if they're like, you know what? Big picture. Now, if they're worried about their passing game, and it hasn't looked good, the coaching change to Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, he's not pushing the right levers. And right now it's not looking very good. So they may decide if that's a problem. That's only 2 weeks in, and things could change quickly. But if they're worried about it, then Swift may have to be a bigger part of that, because he gives them an element of explosiveness that they would need. But again, they're winning. So right now that's not a concern, but it's something we need to keep a close eye on. But right now, look, if you got Swift, you probably got to start him. We look at that. Chad has Eric Gray has a role. 3 weeks. I'm putting all 3 running backs with a projection. I gave projections to Brightwell, Breida, and Eric Gray. I just have no clue what they're going to do. Now, Breida knows the system. Brightwell knows the system. They've been in it for a little while, so they're probably going to be involved. Gray, I haven't had a lot of buzz on him, so a little bit, not sure. Tutu Atwell, a clearizer. Obviously, we talk about Nakua is the guy right now, and he's putting up insane numbers, which is beautiful for him. And but Tutu Atwell, he is not playing like Nakua, but 119 in the opener, 77 last week, 17 targets, 8 and 9. Tutu Atwell's been involved, and Sean McVay he is scheming it up like a genius. Houston Texans, we talked about CJ Stroud a little earlier. Nico Collins, 80 yards in the opener, 146 and a touchdown last week. I know the opponent last week was easy, but the 80 yards against the Ravens wasn't an easy opponent. And 9 and 11 targets. Robert Woods seeing similar targets, averaging about 65 yards. That's strong. Tank Dell, 34 in the opener, gets 10 targets last week, 72 in a touchdown. Right now, it looks like CJ Stroud is going to run an NFL passing attack. And Collins, look, it could fall off, but when he's healthy, he's shown signs of being a good player. Right now, Nico Collins, you have to consider him in your top 30 receivers each week, and maybe a little higher, but you need to consider him at least there. Robert Woods, I think you got to put him inside the top 48 in PPR right now because he's getting this level of target volume. And then Tank Dell is the number 3. He played really well, and he's been good for 2 weeks. We'll still see what his ascent is. I'm going to struggle to put him inside the top 50 right now, but it's close, and he might get higher. If he does it another week, I mean, this could be a 3-receiver set that surprises us. Randy, Jaleel McLaughlin played 3% of the snaps. He did score a touchdown, so we have that. So right now, it looks like a 2-man backfield, and he'll give a breather. I think he would need an injury to get significant time. And let's see what we got here. We got Brandon Kravitz in the house. Brandon Kravitz, how was week 2 for you?
Much better than week 1. So it was nice to get on the board with some fantasy points production. We saw overs go wild this week in the NFL, and I think we all benefited from that. Last night's games were ugly, but all in all, my fantasy teams are still intact despite all of the madness in fantasy.
Oh my gosh, I have a lot of investment in Nick Chubb, but I'm more concerned about Nick Chubb. He's good for the game. He's beautiful for the game, and he's one of the best running backs that I've seen. And Nick Chubb loses out on one valuable year of his career. We all miss out seeing him every Sunday, and he's going to be sorely missed watching him on the field every Sunday. That's been a harsh takeaway for me. Brandon, yeah. I know you've been combing some waivers here. Quarterbacks, it's early in the season, but look, we might need some quarterback help. I think you got a couple of quarterbacks that we could look at to help us out.
Yeah, there are 2 guys that I really like that are on most waivers, and I view them completely different. I'm going to start with Sam Howell of the Commanders. I really think Eric Bieniemy has something brewing in Washington. They've got good receivers. They're scheming these guys open, good balance with the run attack, which gives me a feeling of sustainability with what we're seeing. Sam Howell has legs too, and he hasn't even used them yet. He hasn't deployed that part of his game, just 2 carries in each of the first 2 games. So I see a lot of upside with him moving forward. And then the other one is CJ Stroud. We've seen the full spectrum in 2 weeks. He was less than 10 fantasy points in week 1 against Baltimore, an absolute explosion and a comeback effort against the Indianapolis Colts. Of course, the comeback effort fell short, but fantasy-wise, he was an absolute star. Does draw out some tough matchups, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, and Atlanta the next 3 weeks, but we just know that the draft pedigree looks good. He passes the eye test, and the receivers are a lot better than I think we, in total, that we gave credit to at the beginning of the season. So I'm liking what I'm seeing there. But Howell, to me, is the guy that if you need a starter, get Howell. I would love to have CJ Stroud as my reserve right now.
Yeah, no, good call on that. And I was saying earlier in the show, I'll reiterate that CJ Stroud, the 244 he had against Baltimore, that was impressive. I mean, they were playing with no offense. I mean, no offensive line. They were down 3 linemen in the opener, and Baltimore was bringing pressure, and Stroud was getting it done. Brandon, he's down 4 linemen this week. Larry Tunsil was out. And, he still figured out a way to get it done. So this is like really, really impressive. So fantastic call on both of those. But you like Howell over Stroud, makes sense. Eric Bieniemy is going to actually over time get things even a little better there. All right, running back. You probably heard me with my frustration with not being able to see Nick Chubb on the field. So do you think that there's any chance the Browns go elsewhere to pick up another running back, or are they going to stay in-house? And is there a waiver wire running back that's going to be the fallout of this?
Yeah, I mean, this is the most obvious pickup that we'll probably have all year, even more than Puka Nacua from last week, who has turned out to be quite the ad, doing it 2 weeks in a row. It's Jerome Ford, and he had 19 touches last night, over 130 yards and a touchdown. He looks the part. He was a stud at Cincinnati in college, so this is not a fluke situation. I am not of the belief that they're going to bring in anyone else. It's certainly possible, but if they wanted Kareem Hunt on their roster, they had about 6 months to make it happen. I just don't think that he's the same guy anymore. I don't think they're willing to pay whatever his price tag is. Maybe they get into a Cam Akers market, Jonathan Taylor, which would be great for Taylor's fantasy value because of that offensive line. But I don't know, Jim. I'm sort of the belief that it's Jerome Ford's backfield. And if you're in a fab league, I don't think you can overspend on this guy right now. You're not going to get opportunities like this, a run-heavy offense with a great offensive line and a guy who has the talent to produce, and you've already seen him do it against a good defense. He checks every single box. So I don't even think it's a hot take. Just go wild on this guy and spend 80% of your budget if you have to.
So you kind of dealt with this bridge when you were talking about, but the fantasy managers out there saying, okay, I need a running back. I need to spend up to get him. But what if they bring in someone else? So how do you advise fantasy managers that have that nerve? I may have to spend 60% of my budget, maybe more, to get Ford, but there's not a guarantee that he'll be the guy in 2 weeks.
If your fear is Kareem Hunt, you could actually pick up both. Hunt's on the waiver wire everywhere because he's not on a team. So you might want to spend 60% on Ford and 1% on Hunt and do it that way. If they go the trade route, you could look at getting a Cam Akers on your roster. Jonathan Taylor, that's going to be, you're going to have to move mountains to get that one done. And I don't think he's going to end up there. But those are really the two options. Where else are they going to go where you feel bad about having Jerome Ford on your roster? It's a gamble, but that's what we're doing here. We're taking shots at guys that can win you weeks and then hopefully down the road win you leagues. They're not going to bring in someone next week. So at the absolute worst, you've got one really good start out of Jerome Ford, and then maybe you'll look back and you'll hate us for the advice on spending your whole budget on the guy.
But at least we covered that angle. So somebody looks back and said, hey, at least we approached it and we said, look, this guy could be, you don't want to say league winner and throw that word around, but he kind of could be, because this offense is going to produce rushing success. All right, let's go to wide receiver. Green Bay getting things done. Who's a receiver on that team people should be looking at?
I like Jayden Reed. We've seen the targets increase week over week now. He's a big play guy. They use him in a variety of ways, slot, gadget. I don't know how he's going to produce when Christian Watson comes back, because both of them are not only good in the receiving game, they can also get stuff done in terms of jet sweeps and things like that. But this team has a history of finding wide receiver steals in round 2 of the NFL draft. Reed looks like the real deal. It's another eye test pass for me. 13 targets over the last 2 weeks. That's 5 more than Romeo Doubs, and it's more than Luke Musgrave as well. So he's clearly a big part of their offense. I worry about Watson returning. This is why I wouldn't go crazy on him, but I still think he could have value. There's still a chance that Jayden Reed is the number 2 wide receiver by the time we get to the middle of the season for this offense with how productive he's been.
Now let's go to tight end. Volume is king in fantasy football. So where can we get some volume at tight end?
Look no further than tight end 5 to this early juncture in the season. Talking about Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals, 18 targets over the first 2 weeks, 6 catches in each of his first 2 games. In PPR, he's essentially a must-start tight end at this point, and you got to like the fact that Arizona has been much more competitive than we thought they'd be. So this is a team that's in games, and they're throwing the ball to Zach Ertz. They don't have a lot of other options. So this is a wasteland of a position. It performed much better in week 2 overall than it did in week 1. But Zach Ertz is one of the few that was actually good in both weeks. So maybe he's trying to make a case for, hey, other teams in the NFL come and trade for me by the deadline. And that would be quite the position to put yourself in, adding him to your team and then him getting dealt to a better situation.
And I'm going to add a second tight end here. He was concussed last week, but oh my gosh, Logan Thomas, I almost lost his name for a minute. Logan Thomas had 8 targets in the opener. Last week, he had 4 targets, suffered a concussion. His replacement, John Bates, had another 5 targets. Logan Thomas is still a plus athlete into his 30s, and he was fully on track to see nearly the target share that Zach Ertz saw, but the concussion he could miss this week. We don't know if he plays. Zach Ertz, like Brandon says, is the guy, but if he's taken, and if, like I said, depending what your league dynamics for tight end are, don't sleep on Logan Thomas either. Definitely a possibility there. Defense and special teams, Brandon, is there a team that we should be looking at?
Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs. I see that they're rostered in less than 50% of leagues, so they might be out there for you to plug in. And I don't even think it's a one-week thing. I think this is a multi-week play because they've been really strong defensively. Their offense has been out of sorts. Their defenses look pretty good. They've gone up against 2 of the better quarterbacks in the league, and Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence. And how about this weekend? They get the Chicago Bears, who have had opponents finish 6th and 2nd thus far this season in DST rankings. So Chicago's a mess. The Chiefs should be all over them. They're favored by double digits in this game. Start them this week, and then I think that they could be a move, kind of set it, forget it type of defense moving forward, as long as they're not in one of those Justin Herbert shootouts.
You know, the Chiefs, they, like you said, they were so impressive against the Jaguars. I mean, the corner play with L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie. They got solid corners. They have speed at linebacker with Nick Bolton. And now with Chris Jones back, he just allows everybody else in that front 7 to do their job better because he demands attention. He's disruptive. And obviously we know we have the great coach, Spags, calling that defense. And like Brandon said, this is a defense that, aside from Jones, they may not be a lot of household names. This defense is going to get it done, and they're going to have good game script in a lot of games. Brandon, we're a little bit early, so we have a couple of minutes. Thursday night, we're going to have the Giants and the 49ers playing. So it looks like Saquon Barkley is going to miss multiple weeks. The early reports have it that way. The way he looked angry coming off the field with his foot, elevated. So, this week he already listed as doubtful, but we don't think we'll see him. In the backfield, right now, they have Matt Breida, they have Gary Brightwell, and they have a rookie Eric Gray. What do you see out of this backfield on a short week against the 49ers?
Their best running back is their quarterback, Daniel Jones. I don't think we can trust any of these guys. I wouldn't trust them in a plus matchup. I definitely don't like them against the San Francisco 49ers. So this is not a situation I want to get myself involved with. I know that we're all hungry to gobble up starting running backs, but just because you're the lead back doesn't mean that you're good for fantasy. I'm going to sit this one out, Jim.
Man, I'm telling you, the Giants, man, they got undressed by Dallas. The first half against Arizona, they got undressed again. Fortunately, Arizona thought they won the game and they turned off the switch. And then the Giants came back. And that's what happens, Brandon, right?
Yeah.
It's this subliminal thing. Once you think you won a game and you can't turn it back on, once that switch is off, Arizona just lost it. But into this game, look, Daniel Jones may want to run the ball this week, and your overall comment 100% right. He's their best running back right now. But man, if he tries to run to the outside, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are way faster than Daniel Jones is, and they don't let anybody run for them on them for the most part. And this is going to be a very problematic matchup. That offensive line is a problem, and we know Andrew Thomas, the left tackle, isn't 100%. Now, they could score a touchdown. They could score, get some fluke scores. But is there a world where the Giants get shut out again?
Yeah, I think that's incredibly possible. The San Francisco team looks like the best in the NFL right now, and they create sort of an avalanche. We're seeing that with Dallas as well. When they get on top of you, it's just kind of hard to find your footing. credit to the Rams for still creating some semblance of offense this past weekend, but that's because they have Matt Stafford, and Stafford's still sub-elite at the quarterback position. What we're seeing right now from Daniel Jones is he's trying to stay afloat behind a bad offensive line, and I'm not sure that he's really progressing, and a part of that is just simply because of what he's dealing with up front. I love what I'm seeing from Jalen Hyatt, though. There was some explosion there, and so maybe they end up with a big play, pop them into the end zone. But let's be honest, even if Saquon Barkley was out there, do you really like this Giants team in this matchup? And you'd be forced to start Saquon. So I think Saquon managers out there almost handed a gift in this situation, if you want to look at this on a positive end, because he likely wasn't going to have his best game of the season going up against San Francisco. The 49ers is just a bad matchup for the Giants and what they're not good at. I think it could be very reminiscent of what we saw in week 1.
You know, the last 2 times the Giants played decent football teams, I'll say decent, they're way better. They played the Eagles in the playoffs last year, and they got smoked. They couldn't move the ball. They played Dallas in week 1, and the Dallas defense scored way more points than the Giants 0 on offense. And now they're playing the 49ers. And Brian Daboll, I had said this like last year for much of the year, he was getting by on smoke and mirrors. And at some point, the smoke and mirrors are on tape. You run out of new things to call. And when you face a defense that has extreme talent and you don't have those smoke and mirrors anymore, it could get ugly fast. 49ers on offense. Week 1, Elijah Mitchell gets 5 carries. Not in week 2. McCaffrey played, I want to say 98% of the snaps, basically just held down the fort the entire game. And we saw last year they were limiting McCaffrey's work. Not the case here. Are we keeping Elijah Mitchell on our rosters?
I think you have to. I mean, look at what we just saw on Monday Night Football with Nick Chubb going down, and Jerome Ford now becomes the hottest name on a waiver wire Tuesday. That is exactly what would happen to Elijah Mitchell. When we all cross our fingers and hope that doesn't happen, a lot of us have Christian McCaffrey shares, and I think all of us just love watching the guy play. This is what I say at the beginning of the season. All this stuff about it's one of those storylines that I believe me, I buy into plenty of hype that I end up kicking myself over 3 weeks into the season. But there's one that I just never buy into, is the coach that's going to keep a guy on ice because they want him to be productive later in the season. Every single week in the NFL is a war, and you need your best players out there that are helping you win games. When you have Christian McCaffrey, you don't leave him on the sideline. He doesn't want that. Coaches don't want that. And I would say the same thing about the Philadelphia Eagles. And what we're going to see, a lot of fear over, well, DeAndre Swift, maybe he ends up in this running back by committee and he's not going to be as productive. Well, I'm not saying he's going to have 175 every week, but if he's helping the Eagles win and their offense looks like it's not quite as fluid as it was last year, they're going to keep this guy on the field. Jim, this is the way that it works in the NFL. Every week is treated like its own season. And when you have McCaffrey, you put him out there. We'd all do the same thing.
So Brandon Ayuk, and it's a short week. We don't know, but he was dealing with the shoulder injury throughout that game, in and out of the lineup. It's a short week. If they get out to a lead early in this game, I could see Brandon Ayuk maybe being used a little less than usual to try to get him through and healthy for the following weeks. It would be a mini bye for them. I assume he'll be active right now. Is there does either Deebo Samuel or George Kittle pop for you in this specific matchup against the Giants? We know Kittle was hardly used last week. Deebo's been used a little more than last season to start the year. Either one of those pop to you as maybe a better DFS play in a single slate?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the Deebo game just yet, so he's still somebody that's primed for that breakout. And if they are going to take that approach of, all right, we've got a lead, let's preserve our best offensive player in Christian McCaffrey, I don't think it's Elijah Mitchell that gets the bump. I think it's Deebo Samuel that gets it, because they can do a lot of the same things, and Kyle Shanahan can get awfully creative with the way that he calls plays. So he wants to keep not only the Giants honest, but future defenses and matchups that he's got in front of him. Getting Deebo Samuel involved in the pass game, in the run game, is a way to confuse the hell out of not only the opponent in front of you, but future opponents that are watching film and going, how do we stop this team? So I think the Deebo breakout is coming sooner rather than later.
And then we had two quick questions. We'll get out of here. We had a question from Christian. Can he trust Nico Collins? Off the cuff, I would say Collins was already emerging last year, but he missed time due to injury. But he was playing with Davis Mills. He has an NFL quarterback now. I think Nico Collins is a player. They traded up for him. They believe in him. He's shown flashes, and I believe he could be a stabilizing force. But we're good or bad or indifferent. What's your opinion on Nico Collins?
I think the only thing that would hold him back is if Tank Dell continues to be as explosive as he's been. But honestly, I think that the Texans are going to throw the ball so much that they can activate multiple wide receivers in this offense. I love size. I love speed. We all should at the wide receiver position. And Nico Collins brings both to the table. He's a red zone threat. And I love that touchdown catch in the back of the end zone over the weekend. Man, we're going to see a lot of that over the course of the season. CJ Stroud leans on those guys. So Tank Dell, if he's not somebody that you have rostered, if you see him out there, you got to add him. But as far as Nico Collins goes, I'm not even sure this is a sell high situation. I don't think because he doesn't have the sexy name value, I don't think you could get enough for him. So just be happy that he's on your roster. Wide receiver 2 flex situation. He should be good week to week.
And then Charlene's asking about the Jacksonville defense. And look, they lost Arden Key in the offseason. That was a big deal. He was a big part of their pressure packages. I don't know that they're getting consistent pressure. They really have one good corner in Tyson Campbell, and the other corner spots and even in the slot, a little bit weak in my opinion. I think they'll be a week-to-week defense. When they're at home and they're in a favorable matchup, they could have that advantage. Overall, Jacksonville is outside the top 12 for me. What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I think right now would be the time to take advantage that I live in Florida, so I can attest to the Florida summer heat is a very real factor. It impacts me walking to my car in the afternoon, so you know that these guys feel it. That's part of the reason why the Dolphins in the past have had so much success at home early in the seasons. That's part of the reason why that Chiefs-Jags game that we all thought would be a fantasy fest was a struggle for both of these teams. They have the Texans at home. Now, we just saw the Texans explode offensively, so I don't love the Jags this week, but if there are definitely worse options that are out there. So maybe you take advantage of Jags at home in that Florida summer heat going up against a rookie quarterback. This could be the week to do it, but here we are just talking up Nico Collins. I feel like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. So it would just it's definitely dependent on what else you have at your disposal.
I love the angle with the Heat, though, because not even thinking about that, but that's a big early season factor. Brandon, tell everybody where they could find their work and where they can follow you.
At Brandon Kravitz is where you can find me across all social platforms, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Love to interact with listeners, answer questions, and just sort of talk through all of these things that we discuss right here. I know that each league has such nuance, and so I try and be mindful of that. Fantasy Bites podcast I host for RotoWire. That's 5 days a week. We actually post 7 days, but you can hear me Monday through Friday. That's 5 minutes or less, all the fantasy info that you need for that day. And I'll give you a betting pick or betting prop pick at the end of each episode. And Jim, I've been on fire lately. Last night, Pickens anytime touchdown cashed at plus 270. So we're loving that. And if you're ever in the Orlando area, I host the afternoon show as well, 3 to 6 p.m. on 96.9 The Game and iHeartRadio.
All right, that's Brandon Kravitz. Every Tuesday, he'll be on the show. For Brandon, I'm Jim Coventry. Have a great day, everybody, and thanks for joining us.